Oh, I definitely had dark moments.
Mhm.
I went through a really rough period of depression for other causes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome in to episode 10 of Gamer Chats. And for today's episode, we have a very special guest, Renee, also known as Riku Cat, who is the creator of Potions A Curious Tale. Along with talking about potions, we also talk about some of the inspiration that went into making the game, how she started getting into the gaming industry, and what made her realize that she wanted to get into the gaming industry. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. How are you?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
I'm good. Just got home from work a few hours ago, so good day.
Happy weekend?
No, I'm back out tomorrow,
Ah,
but then I'm off for 4 days, so that's pretty great.
someone came to say hi.
Aw, what's your cat's name? Is it Helios?
His name is Fiddle. Hey diddle diddle, the cat named the fiddle.
Okay. So what? One question I was going to ask, anyways. Based on potions, I think you're a big literary and mythology buff. Is that the case?
That is very much the case. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Ooh, that's hard. One of the stories that stands out to me most is the Journey to the West Tale. I can't say that's an easy read though. It's not an easy book to read.
I don't think I've ever heard
Um,
of it.
Journey to the West,
Yeah.
Sun Wukong, the Monkey King,
No.
the basis of Dragon Ball Z. Uh,
My cat's also, I mean, she's not saying hello, but she's in view.
hmm I think he's saying he wants out. I'm not going to let you out. You can ask someone else. Um, but I also really like Greek mythology. I like how they approach their gods as being very fallible.
Yeah,
They all
yeah,
have their own personality problems and issues, which I think is very relatable.
yeah.
I think it's better than having just like ultimate heroic characters and deities. I kind of love everything though. I like Japanese like Shintoism stuff as well, like the concept of like everything sort of being alive. I think it does really well for their society being respectful of nature and objects and other concepts like that. And it's really fun to see the sort of, I don't know, little personifications
Mhm.
of ideas that come to life.
Okay, so when did you first like start? When did you realize you were like super into like mythology and that sort of thing? This was not a planned question. I was just now I'm curious.
Yeah, gosh, it must have been as a kid. So growing up as a kid, actually, my mom had painted like a 6 foot tall tapestry of Journey to the West. So that's probably one of the reasons why I found that story so compelling.
Yeah.
But I ended up being an avid reader from about age 8 onwards. So I read a ton of fantasy novels.
Mhm.
And then anytime there was mythology and such covered in class, I found that really enjoyable. So I remember studying some Greek deities in fourth or fifth grade that I super enjoyed. I certainly devoured novels at an absurd pace at that age as well. And I guess mythology felt as close as it could get to sort of high fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, and I always enjoy like nursery rhymes and poems. I
Mhm.
mean, sure, like in Potions of Curious Tale, there's Little Miss Muffet and
Yeah.
McDonald's Farm. So
Uh-huh.
there's some hints towards that, as well as a lot of poetry. I studied Shakespeare and the like as well.
Okay. So since you're a fantasy fan, do you also like Brandon Sanderson?
I do like Brandon Sanderson, but I have not had the pleasure of reading as many of his novels as I would like to. I actually bought a big Brandon Sanderson collection on something, so I'm hoping to read more of those. I with my game having been in development for such a long time, I've
Mhm.
pretty put off most of my main hobbies, because I had a
Yeah.
full-time job and then I was working on this game on the side. I'd always feel very guilty doing anything that was not for research for the game itself. So I had read some some myth and lore things, and I've played games related to potions. But I've had a hard time enjoying things that are just for me.
Yeah. So actually, that was sort of one of my questions. You worked on potions for 10 years, right?
About just under 10 years, yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure at some point, probably multiple points, you hit like sort of like creative fatigue, is what I just now decided to call it. How did you like push through that? What was it that was like, okay, if I just get through this little hump or slump, I guess would be a better word.
Yeah, I tried to implement a bunch of different methods to figure out which worked best for me. Certainly when I first started developing potions, I would go through overwork, burnout,
Mm-hmm.
depression over having been burnt out, and like beating myself up over it. Eventually I learned that bite-sized goals were the way to go.
Yeah.
And holding myself to reasonable, very minimal goals actually was more empowering. I would get more work done. Sort of, you've heard the concept of don't hold yourself to working out every day, hold yourself to getting dressed and going to the gym every day.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
once you're at the gym and already dressed, it's a lot easier to get started. And I found that to be true with the development of potions too. So I would hold myself to like one git commit a day, which is like one minor
Mm-hmm.
change. I In terms of creativity, I found that having a bunch of different things to work on was helpful. So, if I was working on a large complex system, I would also have some smaller bugs to fix in the background. And if I was trying to do something creative, if I wasn't feeling creative at that moment, I would focus on something more technical or,
Yeah.
um, you know, all of the other work that needs to get done. I have found that I am not very creative at my computer. Computers are
Yeah.
very distracting and bright.
Yeah, they are.
So I don't have one on me right now. They're in my bag. I have journals of just like journals and journals of chicken scratch notes of design ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
So if I really needed to do something creative, I would leave my phone somewhere and then go with a journal, and all I would have is a journal and a pen, whether it was at a coffee shop or in my backyard, or just up in the window seat in my house.
Yeah.
And that is where I could find my creativity, because I think I have a very busy mind, and I can fill my busy mind with things that are going on.
Yeah.
But if I remove those distractions, the creativity comes out.
I'm sure you got this question quite a bit, but when did you first get the idea for potions?
Yeah, so I got the first idea for potions mid 2014, and it was part of a experiment, honestly. I knew that I wanted to enter the games industry officially. I had done
Mhm.
some work on games in biotech. I had done some pro
Cool.
bono work for indie studios, but I was trying to get a proper job within the games industry, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a producer, like a project manager,
Mhm.
an engineer, or a game designer. And I had never
Mhm.
tried to design a game before,
Right.
so I decided to just sit down with some paper and work on doing some game design.
Mhm.
Uh, and one of the games I designed was an answer to the problem that in adventure games and action adventure games and action RPGs, you're supposed to be a heroic character, and then you are rewarded for slaughtering every single creature you see,
Yeah.
whether or not it's just a fluffy bunny or a dragon.
Yeah.
And that never really felt good to me.
Mhm.
Like I'm definitely someone who hates killing the night sabers in World of Warcraft. I don't want to hurt cats, and it sucks
Yeah.
when they're requests too. And so I wanted to figure out a mechanic that wasn't forced, like a karma system,
Mhm.
that would encourage players to be a little bit more considerate about their slaughter.
Right.
And what I came up with was, well, players are economical, so
Mhm.
they're probably only going to refrain from combat if it economically doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And how could you do that? Well, if they don't have an auto attack and all attacks take resources,
Mhm.
then they will be more cautious about what they're spending their resources on. As we all know, people who play Skyrim hoard every single freaking potion they ever get and like never use it because they're scared of it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to play with that idea, and potions seems like a really good execution of that because they could have different abilities, be magical, still feel interesting and powerful to use, but very clearly have a connection to the resources. Like you use resources to make a potion, and then when you use that potion, the
Yeah.
resources and potion are spent.
In the, I guess in the farm, um, the character asked you to get a harpy talon. Was it necessary to kill a harpy to get the harpy talon?
It is, and
Okay.
as Granny tells you, sometimes combat is necessary.
Yes.
Toad eyes don't grow on trees. Now, you don't have to use an aggressive potion to get the harpy talon. You don't have to use a potion at all. You can get a harpy to chase you and run it into an ice hog, and the ice hog's attack can kill the harpy.
Okay.
In fact, there are very, very few situations that you ever have to act aggressively yourself. You can beat every boss fight but one without using any aggressive potions at all. And the one that you have to use aggressive potions, you're not using it on the boss, you're using it on something else.
So how difficult was it to get creative with that? Like using
Um,
other game mechanics to sort of force an aggressive solution.
yeah, I think that it was the potential ideas came easily, but the balance and tuning was difficult.
Yeah.
Um, because it's a game called Potions. Obviously, it should be about using potions,
Yeah.
but you're trying to both encourage and discourage the use of potions, and
Yeah.
getting that right balance between, oh, I should use a potion now versus I should just, set the world aflame. It was required a lot of playtesting and tuning. And actually, that's what helped me lean more into using hazards in the environment and enemies against each other, because it gave you an out. So I decided to lean more into sort of the wit and strategy and puzzle solving than
Hmm.
the actual puzzle or a potion use. And so potions are absolutely a component of that.
Hmm.
But overall, the game is about strategy and being creative.
Like the totems in the fairy forest or near the fairy forest.
Exactly.
Yeah. So were there times when you felt like just really frustrated, like you were on the brink of just like, this is too much?
Um, oh, I definitely had dark moments.
Hmm.
I went through a really rough period of depression for other causes. Uh, One of my closest friends and the graphic designer on Potions passed away unexpectedly on his birthday.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Um, yeah, yeah, and oh gosh, he was just like the sweetest person. Like I played Dota with him and he never raged, and you know how sweet you have to be to not rage playing Dota. uh and actually he's an NPC in the game now. So you can do a little quest for him, and it's very sweet. It's great that he's able to live on and share his sort of humor and
Yeah.
golden heart with others. That was obviously difficult, but like
Mhm.
twofold. Like on one side, like losing somebody so close to you can just be so painful.
Yeah.
And on the other side, it gave me even more motivation to make sure that I finished the game and brought his work to the world as
Yeah.
well. Um, I have had really demanding jobs while working on potions.
Hmm.
I had a successful Kickstarter, but it was not enough to give myself a single cent. So all of the funds from the Kickstarter have gone to contractors who've helped me out with art and audio and
Hmm.
other aspects of the game. And for a while I was the head of the IGDA, and that was during the pandemic. So, I was working 60, 70 hours a week trying to
Oh.
support the game development industry and game developers, and then also doing my best to work on potions.
Mhm.
And it, the weird thing is, I don't remember what it's like to not feel guilty about enjoying my time. right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like anytime I would play a game that wasn't for potions research, I'd be like, I should be playing a game that's for researching mechanics and potions.
Yeah.
Or, anytime I wanted to, I do art for fun. I just do watercolor. I'm not particularly good, but anytime I wanted to paint watercolor, I was like, well, really, if I'm feeling creative, I should be working on potions design or levels design.
Yeah.
And so having that just like guilt in the back of my mind for a decade, like that has been rough. And I certainly don't feel free of it yet because I'm still doing patches and hot fixes and I'm trying to do console porting.
Hmm.
um but it will be interesting to feel like I can cosplay again,
Yeah.
or focus on other creative projects without feeling guilty about it.
Have you been able to find more time to like reward yourself for the work that you've put in now?
N- Not yet. So it's only been 3 weeks since launch,
Yeah.
and I certainly have taken time to myself, but that's been mostly for mental health reasons.
Yeah.
As people may or may not be aware, my launch was very eventful,
Yeah.
and some people on the internet had a strong reaction to me, which caused a lot of harassment.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And yeah, and both going through doing hot fixing and trying to support my community while also dealing with really gross levels of harassment
Mhm.
certainly took its toll. So I was having a rough time mental health wise. And so I've tried to be a bit gentle with myself, but again, sort of feel guilty anytime I step away too long.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I have just the sweetest community. I mean, Potions is a very heartwarming game,
Yeah.
and so
It
the
is.
people who participate in the community are just so nice. And I expected that I would maybe get like 2 or 3 fan letters about Potions in my whole
Mhm.
life. And I've gotten like a fan email like almost every day. And I've gotten fan messages on the different platforms like several times a day. And that's
Mhm.
just like, that's so sweet. I'm actually tearing up because it's so lovely that this game has not only impacted people and given them joy, but that they have taken time out of their day to just share kind words and support. That's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very heartwarming and helps me, you know, um, put aside the less kind comments.
Well, I was thinking, I think yesterday on my way to the airport, it's very easy to sort of get wrapped up in the negative comments. Even like if 99% of your day is good, it's the bad that stands out. And so it's very easy to let that 1% affect you because it's so starkly different. Was this your first time going to GDC?
I've been to GDC 9 times, I believe. So I've
Okay.
been I've been going since 2014.
By the way, I did want to tell you the music in Potions is very catchy.
I'm
Uh,
so glad to hear that.
yeah, which is a good thing because music is super important to me in video games, and like I keep hearing the guitar riff from the farm just in my head, and I super like that. Was there a part of what's been the most rewarding part of designing or creating potions, or like going through the whole process? Because I'm sure there was something that felt good that maybe you weren't expecting to.
Yeah, so um I I was trying to create potions with positive messages.
Mhm.
And I wanted it to be based on sort of wit. But when I first started making potions, I didn't realize actually who my proper target audience was. I thought it was people who like similar action adventure games like Zelda fans.
Yeah.
And Zelda fans, of course, all genders, all ages, but the main set of them tend to be men between the ages of like 15 and 35. And so I was like, okay, well, action adventure crafting game, probably going to appeal to that general audience.
Mhm.
And so I demoed at PAX and got a decent response. And then I demoed at a small conference called Geek Girl Con in Seattle. And I was actually the first video game to demo there because they had a lot of board game representation. And my booth got absolutely swarmed. And it was just like the cutest, most heartwarming thing. There was
Yeah.
like a little girl who came up in a witch outfit,
Uh-huh.
not knowing about my game, and
Yeah.
just pointed at the trailer and said, "Look, mommy, it's me." And I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, it's so sweet."
Yeah.
And then a set of parents came up to me and they said, "Hey, thank you so much for being here and doing this. Our daughter is in second grade and she's getting bullied for liking Minecraft
Oh.
because her peers are saying that video games are for boys. And so to have a game here that is about a young girl that she can enjoy, and having you here as a woman game developer means so much to her. Like, thank you so much." And at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, of course, I am making a game for 12-year-old me. I like, yeah, certainly other people of ages and genders can enjoy this,
Yeah.
but like, I'm making this game for what I wanted to have when I was growing up. And it's
Yeah.
connecting so well with that, younger women audience. And that really inspired me, because it helped me better tune the story and writing and everything else. Like, I didn't, dumb down the game at all to be able to be played by kids, but I made sure that there wasn't excessive violence or, too scary of things. Like, you'll be chased by giant spiders,
Yeah.
but there's nothing like really terrifying.
Right.
And I certainly didn't reduce the complexity of the writing at all. Like,
Mhm.
it's still a high reading level, but I think that's a really good learning opportunity, just as introducing fairy tales and folklore from around the world is a
Mhm.
good educational opportunity.
Yeah, like one creature that I just saw, the mouse whale from Icelandic
Yeah.
folklore, and I was like, huh, I never have thought about Icelandic folklore, first of all, but mouse whale, that's kind of cool.
Mushveli, yeah,
Yeah.
the mouse whale of Iceland.
So what what is your earliest memory and association with video games? Like what was your first video game? I guess
No
that's what.
one will expect this, honestly. This always blows people away. My very first game was Wolfenstein 3D.
Okay.
And I started out on first person shooters. So my first four games in order
Really?
were Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, Pokemon Yellow. And so, especially as a creator of a very Nintendo-esque game, right? Cozy, actiony. I
Yeah.
didn't have my own. I had a Nintendo 64 with Hey You Pikachu and Pokemon Stadium, and
Mhm.
then traded it for a PlayStation. So like, I did not grow up with Zelda. I did not grow up with like Animal Crossing
Yeah.
and Harvest Moon and things like that. I grew up with hardcore first person shooters, and then I got really into like JRPGs and MOBAs and
Okay.
MMOs and things. So I definitely started playing Zelda games after I started working on potions, just
Yeah.
because I recognized that there was a lot of potential inspiration.
Mhm.
um but yeah, my whole childhood was pretty heavily in first person shooters, and the game that really made me fall in love with video games was Half-Life, the original Half-Life.
Okay.
Just like, oh, it changed my view of games. Games before were just sort of like a digital toy. Like,
Yeah.
Half-Life was the first time I felt immersed in the world and story, and everything like all came together. Like, the scripted events didn't feel like scripted events. The go to point A and point B, like, quests
Yeah.
didn't feel like quests. It felt like you were really a scientist escaping this facility.
Mhm.
And it was just so well done that it completely changed my view of video games. I was like 8, so
Yeah, that's really cool. And I don't think I've heard anybody say that that was like their first like love or first video game maybe. Um
it's so good.
uh I'm so bad at shooters. Like so they're not fun for me. Also driving in video games, not fun for me.
Oh, I'm terrible at driving. Yeah, vehicle controls and I are not friends. I grew up as a PC gamer, so I'm kind of awkward with controllers. And that was one of my
Yeah.
concerns with potions. You can play potions with keyboard and mouse or controller. Uh, and making sure controller felt right
Yeah.
required a lot of surveys and asking other people like what would feel good, because I am not a console gamer. I have consoles. I play games on consoles now, but
Mhm.
I am quite awkward with those controls.
So when did you start like branching into working with video? Actually, let me ask this first. What was your main job originally?
So I got my degree in engineering with a focus in mechanical engineering to
Mhm.
become a biomechanical engineer. And I worked in biotech for my first 2.5 years out of college.
Okay. And then, so when did you start shifting more towards working on video games?
So it was actually my senior year of college that I realized I could be a game developer, and then
Mhm.
was like, ah, darn, I got the wrong degree. Because I had almost switched to getting a computer science degree, which would have set me up a lot better.
Mhm.
So once I learned that, I started learning more about the game development industry. I started teaching myself programming. And actually, while I was in biotech, I switched over from being a system and design engineer to being
Mhm.
a software engineer in biotech. So I was doing
Cool.
both full stack development of HIPAA compliant medical programs.
Uh-huh.
And I actually was able to make some mini games in biotech for doing some of the standard tests
Cool.
because a lot of those tests were not well designed for younger people. But
Mhm.
you could easily get those tests done with like interaction speed and pattern matching
Mhm.
simple games. So in my final year at biotech, I was acting as a software engineer, and then I was also volunteering pro bono to help indie studios on the side. So I did both
Mhm.
production, which is project management, as well as I ended up doing server development on some indie teams. When I left biotech, I wanted to get into the games industry, and that's what I sort of threw myself
Mhm.
into. But it turns out that if you're not fresh out of college and you have a mechanical engineering background and you're a self-taught programmer, it's like really hard to get your first job in the games industry.
Yeah.
So I knew that something that would be important is creating a portfolio, a
Mhm.
portfolio of small projects I had worked on. And that's actually where I came up with the concept for potions. I was
Oh,
playing
cool.
around with game design
Mhm.
and then was trying to create a prototype for my portfolio. But people really liked the sort of alternative combat approach, the resource
Mhm.
management. Um, and so I kept playing with it and kept playing with it, and then
Yeah.
ultimately decided to run a Kickstarter. And once the Kickstarter was successful, I'm a stubborn person. I didn't want to let my Kickstarter backers down,
Yeah.
so I saw it through to the end without cutting anything. It's the game I wanted to make.
That's awesome. Because I feel like a lot, or sometimes maybe when you're creating something, you have to sort of sacrifice something, and
Yeah,
you stay true to your vision.
I mean, I guess I sacrificed my time, right? Like the development took 9.5 years.
I
So
mean, yeah, yeah.
my sacrifice was that. But yeah, no, I recognize usually you're trying to cut content, right? You're trying to make it the MVP, the minimum viable product. And I think to some extent Potions is the MVP that I desired. I could
Mhm.
always add more to it.
Yeah,
But it still has the full story, the 8 biomes, the
yeah.
6, 7 boss fights and things like that, 107 potions.
Wow. I have made a lot of indiscernible ooze. Maybe almost 107. Well, I tried to be creative with what I'm throwing together, and I guess I am not good with chemicals. Actually, I was terrible at chemistry in high school. Uh,
Oh, chemistry actually always threw me off as well. And that's because it was taught as these are the rules except for all of these exceptions you need to memorize.
yeah.
And that is like a terrible way to teach chemistry. I understand why it's done that way because for the most part, if you're ever like calculating things, like that's all you need to know.
Mhm.
But I didn't actually understand chemistry well until it was explained to me, like the valences and like why things were actually acting differently.
Mhm.
And that was pretty late in college. But when it comes to potions and the combination of potions, I
Mhm.
tried to make sure that was all really straightforward. So I have like a master guide of like, okay, if you have significantly more earth than fire, it's lava. Or if it's like this, it's metal. Or if you have more water than fire, it's steam, and more air, then it's
Hmm.
storm. So I made sure that like the potion combinations were really consistent. And I've noticed players respond well to that because they'll start noticing those patterns. They're like, oh, this is how you make an ice line. So
Yeah.
that means if I do this, it should make a lava line. And they're like, yeah, I made a lava line. And they like feel really accomplished for having recognized the patterns.
Yeah. How did you come up with like what potions were like you wanted to put in the game? Like what sort of elemental effects, like cone of spines or spine cone of what,
Coat of
spines?
Spikes, I
Yeah,
think is
yeah.
yeah. So that's a metal-based potion. I sort of approached the development of the potion combinations in two ways. One is I knew there were certain types of potions I wanted to have. I wanted to have consumable potions. I wanted to
Mm,
have ranged AoE potions. I wanted to have small cones, and I wanted to have lines. And eventually, I decided I wanted to have like ferociously magical, which is like I call those blocks because it's just like a tidal wave of things that you summon. Um, and then the main inspiration was actually making sure that experimentation in potions felt fair.
mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, any in combination of one mana ingredients will always create a potion. So
Right.
when you first start out, it is like impossible to fail. You can get some rare ingredients and then maybe mess up with those. And then beyond that point, every two element combination, so like
Mm-hmm.
fire, water, earth, air, be 5 earth, 1 air, those always result in a potion. And so I did a whole spreadsheet of these different combinations to ensure that there was always success if you followed
Mm-hmm.
like the bare minimum rules. And then I tried to categorize those and break them down into themes. And so
Mm-hmm.
some of those themes were consumable themes, some of those themes were like lines,
Mm-hmm.
like the shape of the potion effect. And
Right.
then some of those ended up being elemental. And so I actually did like a whole I have a worksheet where I was like, okay, if it is three more one element than the other element, this means that this is a skewed potion, and therefore like these are the skewed potion things in this shape. And so that's how I got those patterns. And it just took a little bit of iteration
Mm-hmm.
and pre-planning.
Is your Instagram slash Twitch handle, is that inspired from Riku from Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy X? Or
Neither.
neither?
Yeah. So Riku, Raku, is the name of my feral druid, and
Okay.
that's why it's Riku Cat or Riku Kitty.
Mm-hmm.
Because I play a feral druid, which I run around as a cat and like attack things and bite things.
Yeah.
And Riku is the first four-letter name that went through the WoW creator. I think I tried like 17 names before Riku went through, so I
Mm-hmm.
had like no particular attachment to Riku. It was just something I was trying to create. I wanted to create a character name that was simple and quick to write and didn't have any special characters and
Yeah.
was pronounceable. And so, yeah, 17th shot, I got Riku, and I've been playing World of Warcraft for the last 17 years in the same guild for the whole time. So that has really become a second identity for me. So that's why I
Yeah.
use that name everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, Zeebs is starting to become a second identity for me just because that's what people on Twitch have started calling me. And I'm online more, maybe almost as much as I'm at work. And so when people use my name at work, I'm like, what? Who?
Thankfully, like Riku and Renee are like kind of close. Both like start with an R, two syllables.
Yeah.
So I respond to either one quite well. And it's interesting because I've now met my guildmates in person, so they will swap between calling me Riku and Renee
How was
in
that?
raids even.
Meeting your
It
online
was so
friends in real life.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd been in the same guild as I said for 17 years, so I've known these people really well. I was able to meet some of them earlier than others. But when I moved to Baltimore because one of my partners had a work over there,
Hmm.
and I didn't know anyone except for my guild mates,
Mhm.
because my guild has a lot of people in the Baltimore area.
Mhm.
And I went from having no friends to suddenly having dinner every Thursday night with this group of people. It was my guild master, our off tank,
Mhm.
who is his wife, our raid leader and main tank,
Mhm.
and then one of our DPS. And that just became like my social group, and it was so lovely because most of them were surprisingly very much like themselves
Mhm.
in person than online.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have discrepancies there, but
true.
they're very true to themselves, and they're just intelligent,
Mhm.
driven, funny, and not afraid of giving me flack, which I can appreciate too.
Well, that's what friends do.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
friendly jerks.
have you been playing since vanilla? Wow.
I started in BC,
Okay.
so missed out on some of those early achievements, but I've been playing pretty regularly since BC. Have taken some breaks here and there. Wasn't a big fan of Mists of Pandera, so I
Mhm.
only got to max level and then stopped. And of course, life gets in the way, especially
Yeah.
working so much and trying to work on a game. So I definitely, since I started potions, have been doing sort of the bare minimum as a raider.
Yeah.
But I try to make sure I'm not a dead weight when it comes to helping the guild.
So, since you finished potions, have you, or even while you were working on it, I guess, have you thought of other games?
Yeah, I definitely have some ideas kicking around. But like my next set of tasks is going to be bringing potions to console,
Mhm.
doing a few more patches now that the game is out, and we'll be gaining some amount of income. I'm going to be reinvesting that into improving some art and audio assets.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, I want to create a bunch of sort of smaller, more quickly developed games. So
Uh-huh.
I was actually thinking of doing some party games, because party games are a collection of mini games, and
Yeah.
that's much more bite sized.
Yeah. Like Jackbox maybe, or maybe even Mario Party.
Yeah, more in the Mario Party realm.
Hmm.
I think we all have our own complaints with Mario Party. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things it does well, but it definitely focuses on anybody can win.
Hmm.
I want to have it be a little less random chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, so what outside of games, and you referenced Dragon Ball earlier, what other nerdy content do you enjoy?
Oh man, let's see. I definitely have some Miyazaki stuff here, uh,
Awesome.
and and other things.
Yeah, because you had the sprites in.
The Sid sprites,
Yeah.
yeah. My neighbor Totoro was one of the films I watched
Hmm.
as a small child, and really fell in love with. And actually, I'm a big fan of Princess Mononoke as well, which I also watched as a small child.
Hmm.
Not necessarily small child appropriate. There is sort of decapitation and a lot of gore in that
Yeah.
one, but it's a really good film and very empowering. So I loved that.
I
Um,
well,
oh,
I
go ahead.
just didn't watch any of the Ghibli films until I was well into my 20s, and I still haven't watched Graveyard of the Fireflies because somebody said it's very
Ooh,
heavy.
yes. Yeah, this is really depressing. You just basically get to see kids dying from nuclear fallout slowly. I
Yeah.
wouldn't recommend that one. I like the fantasy ones. I guess that's a good lead off. Obviously loved video games my whole life. Also loved reading my whole life. I devoured books as a kid. I devoured
Yeah.
books, in high school. Like other kids were sitting behind in the back row, like texting under the table, and I was sitting in the back row reading fantasy novels under the table.
Yeah.
Um, I I love cosplay. Like I think
Hmm.
that's a really interesting. It's a good combination of engineering plus creativity.
Yeah.
So I think that's fun. Crafts in general, I really enjoy. The soot sprites, I actually, that's like one of my only art pieces in Potions of Curious Tale. That's one of the few pieces of art I made. I'm
Really?
not a particularly talented artist, but
Mhm.
I do really enjoy that as an outlet. And then something that people don't expect, I'm really into gardening and food science. So I super
Really
love all food science related things. I watch a ton of like educational YouTube stuff. I
interesting.
love like Max Miller's Tasting History as
Mhm.
well. I really nerd out about food, and so most of my garden is like edible herbs and other things like
I
that.
was just gonna ask what you garden.
Yeah, I have the sage and rosemary and thyme
Mhm.
and summer savory and lemon thyme and chocolate mint and
Wow.
oregano, and then berries, blueberries, raspberries, anything I can consume. And then there's going to be tomatoes and peppers. I really like home growing peppers and making hot sauces because I'm also a bit of a spice head. So,
Cool. I'm a huge baby when it comes to spices. So
oh,
I
you should build up your tolerance. You're missing a world of flavor.
I know. I and I also sweat very easily, and even if my food like is temperature wise not spicy hot, I will sweat. And
Yep, yep. I definitely can get a little drippy. Actually, it's my nose. My nose when I eat spicy food
yeah.
is what gets me. My dad, his bald spot gets wet when he eats enough spice.
Yeah.
Um, oh, and then one of my few guilty pleasures I've kept up is like manga and web comics.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Like which
so
ones?
I read a lot of Otome Isekai. And if that Isekai is transportation to another world,
I know what
often like a
isekai is,
fantasy world.
but I don't know what
Otome
atome
is
is.
like girl dating sim games, like
Mm,
where you are a girl and trying to date boys. So it's
okay.
basically female romance isekai.
Okay,
It's a
okay.
lot of like overthrow the patriarchy, bring sanitization to medieval times, and maybe date a dragon slaying hottie in the
Have
meantime.
you watched or read Dr. Elisa?
I've seen a few episodes of it. That's something I would enjoy. I just haven't gotten too into that series.
I've really enjoyed it. For a lot of reasons, but just you saying like bringing sanitization made me think of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ones that have those theming, and I think that's fun. As a engineer nerd, like I really like the ones that are sort of based around a modern person coming into this like historical fantasy and being like, "Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like let's improve society, please. Like this is terrible."
Yeah.
And the political intrigue, some combat. I've devoured a lot of these types of things, and I I don't really watch anime anymore, but growing up, anime was big for me.
Mhm.
My mom and I would watch Sailor Moon together at
Aw.
like some ridiculous time in the morning when it was being broadcast. We'd go downstairs and snuggle up and watch Sailor Moon. And my mom's the one who bought all of the Studio Ghibli films for me. So definitely have a very nerdy household. I think my
Yeah.
mom has watched more Naruto than I have. And thankfully have seen support of like my parents were okay with me becoming a game developer,
Mhm.
especially which is good because it's not like getting an engineering degree is easy. So switching industries nearly completely was certainly a large pivot.
Yeah. Well, I think my not I think I know my mom was like sort of who got me into the nerdier side of things. There were things I wasn't allowed to watch as a kid because I grew up Southern Baptist. I am not anymore, which was a fun conversation to have. But my mom started me on Star Wars when I was a kid, and then later, like Lord of the Rings. And I did not read the books first. And I don't think I could have because one, I'm a very slow reader, and Tolkien is very wordy and just sort of droll.
Yeah, I mean, he is a linguist who created a fantasy world to make
Mhm.
his languages have a place to live, in
Yeah.
my opinion, which I think is fine. Yeah, I would say that my dad brought the video game aspect into my life, and my mom brought the fairy tales, folklore, and stories.
Mhm.
She uh, got her master's in like literature,
Oh,
and
cool.
writing. So
I think my dad
we
did too, or at least English.
nice.
And actually, my dad and I had one of the same professors in college, and I didn't know this until like she was giving me my paper back, and she was like, "You and your dad have the same writing style," and I was like, "That's weird because how do you know my dad?" And second of all, I'd never written with my dad,
Small
so
world.
yeah. Um, so one time when I was in college, I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and it rains a lot there. So the parking lot had kind of flooded, and I was wearing Toms, which, as you probably may know, are not good with rain or any kind of liquids. So my feet were drenched. So I was like, I'm just not gonna wear shoes to class, and I did. I went to class barefooted, and my dad called me and was like, "Hey, our your professor just called me and asked if everything was okay at home because you didn't wear shoes to class." And I was like, "Oh, it's weird that you guys are on that personal of a level." But
Yeah, seriously.
um but yeah, I will never forget that cuz I mean, one, good on me for being so dedicated to go to class cuz I hated school um a lot. Not cuz I hate
I have
learning.
good tenacity.
I just, like if I want to learn anything, like I'll learn it myself.
I I have found that I am much better at self-teaching, which is funny. Like I did really well in high school. I mean, I was valedictorian, so
Oh wow.
that worked out. In college, I went to a very, very, very demanding college. Like our intro physics course was special relativity and quantum mechanics.
Mhm.
Um, so I suddenly was dealing with a bunch of other valedictorians and salutatorians, and was no longer in the top 1%. I was like in the bottom 30%. So that was a bit of a
Ego check maybe?
yeah, yeah, right. Which I think is healthy, right? I was
Mhm.
an obsessive perfectionist before. I would like
Mhm.
cry if I didn't get 100% on a test. It was really bad.
Wow.
So getting some humility knocked into me and learning to be okay with just barely passing,
Yeah.
I think helped me a lot. Because you can't go through life being ultimately successful at everything. Like failure is really important, and so is accepting that like I'm not going to be the best artist, I'm not going to be the best musician, I'm not going to be the best programmer, I'm not going to be the
Yeah.
best game developer, but I can give it a shot.
Are you a musician?
I I played the tenor saxophone and bass
Mhm.
guitar and clarinet.
Cool.
I haven't done much composition myself.
Mhm.
But so like I am a player of instruments. I wouldn't call myself necessarily a musician.
I well,
I've
I'm
written
not
some
sure I see the
songs.
distinction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I have been around some very talented musicians. I've dated some very talented composers.
Mhm.
So I don't see myself as even close to their level. I'm not scratching the surface.
Well, comparison is the thief of joy, and
Yeah, that's true.
apparently
That's
the
true.
title of musician. uh, so when did you start playing instruments?
um, I I started in school. It was just part of normal lessons. I think we
Mhm.
were given recorders in second grade, and then in or third grade, and then like fourth, fifth, sixth grade, I played, or fourth grade, fifth grade, I played clarinet, and then I switched over to tenor saxophone in fifth and sixth
Mhm.
grade, and then I was in the jazz band and all of that throughout middle school and high school.
Is that your favorite instrument?
Is my most competent instrument, and I have
Okay.
a love for saxophone.
Mhm.
When I was a child, that's when Bill Clinton was president, and he made saxophone seem really cool. Um, I do like the sound of it. I wish I could play guitar. Like I can pluck out some bass lines, but
Mhm.
I'm not guitar competent. So maybe that's something I will work on learning. It's
Mhm.
just I am impressed by like guitar and piano in being such wide range instruments that
Mhm.
can carry a whole, band on their own. And so, yeah, those are the things I might want to learn in the future.
I think violin is what I super want to learn right now. Well, actually, I've wanted to learn violin for years, but recently, after playing Night in the Woods and hearing it in that game so much, I was like, oh man, I got to do that. So I played guitar for I think like 22 years, and I love the guitar, but I want to be like competent at another instrument.
Yeah. Well, getting to a fretless string instrument with a bow, like, be ready to sound awful for a bit.
That's like the hardest thing for, I mean, not just me, but like for a lot of people, like learning something new is not being good.
Yeah. I think we need to embrace not being good more.
I agree with
Um,
that.
yeah,
And
like
also, you don't
it,
have to be good at something to enjoy something.
exactly. Yeah, I think that especially in Western culture, there's just this like gotta be hustling, right? Like
Yeah.
everything has to be for like forward improvement and money
Hmm.
and etc. And like I think we need a lot more of stopping and smelling the flowers and doing shitty paintings and sounding bad on violin
Hmm.
as long as you're having fun with it.
Well, yeah, and you don't have to be like, I think he was more a cello player, or this Yo-Yo Ma to be a violinist, or you don't have to be Jackson Pollock to be a painter. You can still be a painter and not be like world renowned or earning an income like you're saying.
Yeah, just like you can enjoy playing League of Legends without being platinum and above, right?
Yeah.
Or Masters League or whatever they call it these days.
Actually, first, how do you like Baltimore? I've only been like 2 or 3 times, but
So I grew up on the West Coast and have returned to the West Coast. Being on the East Coast was really interesting. It's awesome because everything's so close to each other.
yeah.
Like major cities on the West Coast are like 3.5 hours apart minimum.
Also, kind of
Whereas
because of traffic in some parts of like
yeah,
California.
yeah, that too. Yeah, but like San Francisco to LA is like 6 to 8 hours depending on how much you speed. Um, yeah, I found it really interesting because like popping over to like Philadelphia was a relatively short drive. Going down to DC was just hopping on a train for less than an hour.
Hmm.
Um, I am not good with humidity. I grew up in Seattle where
Yeah.
people think it's humid. It is like not it mists here,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't get in your lungs humid. And so the summers in Baltimore were super brutal and
Yeah.
the winters were also really brutal. And then I felt like I got like 2 or 3 weeks of spring and fall on each side and then it
Hmm.
just like sucked outside of that. I am a very much an outdoor person, so it was a little rough, like figuring out how to tolerate the heat and cold and humidity. Um, Unfortunately, most of my time in Baltimore was during the pandemic, so
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I didn't get full exploration of it. But I did find, gosh, Hamden, which is a really cute neighborhood full of like eateries, very hip,
Hmm.
to be lovely. And that's actually where my guildies and I would usually get dinner. So
So,
have a lot of fond memories of that neighborhood.
so being from Seattle, is Biscuit Bitch one of your favorite places to eat?
I used to work when I was in biotech. I worked at Pike Place Market, and so I would get biscuit bitch
Yeah.
for breakfast. Yeah, hot bitch or something.
Uh huh.
The Louisiana hot links
Hmm.
along with the sausage gravy. Yeah, I enjoy biscuit bitch. There's also a really good Humbao or Char Siu Bao place in Pike Place Market called Me Some Pastries, and I will always go there. The pastries are like the size of your head, and they are
Okay.
filled with like the best barbecued pork. Um, it's super good. I am a huge foodie, so if you get me started, I will not shut up. So I'll try not to just start telling you all of my favorite restaurants.
Well, I go to Seattle very regularly because it's one of my favorite cities to go, and conveniently enough, I get paid to go. Um,
Nice.
and we stay near the market, so
Go with
Uh,
me some pastry for sure.
yeah, I've never heard of it, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye out. One of my favorite places to go is Skalka.
Oh yeah, Skulk is great too.
Um, and they stopped making it, but they had this drink called the honeybee, and it sounded horrible in my head because it's black coffee and orange juice in one cup, and I was like, that's gross. But I got it, and I was like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So
Don't they do that in like Italy? I feel like Italy has some weird combo.
they
Or
might.
one of those Mediterranean European countries.
I've only been to Rome, and it was for like 16 hours. I only went out for 3 of those.
Oh, okay, okay. Um, yeah, Italy is someplace I want to go back to just because of food.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of which, De Laurentiis in Pike Place Market is an Italian custom like specialty food store, and they
Oh,
have
neat.
the biggest selection of cheeses I have ever seen. Almost anywhere. I think maybe in Vancouver there might be a better place,
Hmm.
but they have amazing cheeses. They have amazing cured meats. They have a bunch of import olive oil, balsamic vinegar, chips, pasta, everything you can like think of. And they have really good sandwiches and pizza that you can get at their counter too.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now I have some new places to check out. I'm excited. Okay,
Yeah.
favorite coffee shop.
Ooh. Not in Seattle. It is Prototype Coffee in Vancouver, BC.
Okay.
I have like the nerdiest third wave coffee tastes.
Hmm.
So that's actually really hard to find here in Seattle. Um, so I like anaerobic fermented, like
Hmm.
weirdly processed coffee because it gives it like this really like rich chocolate red wine
Hmm.
funky flavors. Um, and Prototype in Vancouver is the best place in the world, as far as I'm aware, for all of these really strange and interesting coffees.
Interesting. I've only been there long enough to enjoy anything once, and I did like a bike tour or something. And I
It's on
bet I did.
Hastings,
Okay.
so it's pretty easy to get to, and it's right next to the cheese shop. They're like a block apart.
Okay. So, last question. If you were going to give any advice to any gamers or anyone who wanted to break into the gaming industry, what advice would that be?
Yeah, I think the number one thing to do to break into the games industry is to start making games. Like I know that
Hmm.
seems a little reductive, but you will learn so much about what you might want to do in the games industry. Like you might think, I want to be a game designer, and then when you start getting into it, you're like, oh, never mind, I actually want to be a gameplay programmer. Or you might think, I want to be an artist, and then you realize you actually want to be an animator or a rigger.
Hmm.
And so just starting to do small tutorials, maybe make a mod for your favorite game, anything that gets you into the process of figuring out like how game development works is really great. If you want to do first person shooters, Unreal Engine's a good place to start. If you want to do more generic stuff and are trying to learn programming, Unity has their learn.unity.com courses, which are
Hmm.
super valuable. And if you are younger, I don't know how
Hmm.
young your audience runs, but there's like Scratch, which is visual programming that's targeted at like elementary school kids. And like, if you want to get your kids into game programming because they're interested in it,
Hmm.
that's a good place for them to start. Um, Portfolio, as I said before, is really important. So
Hmm.
saving out those tutorial projects as things that you've done and participating in game jams. Once you have your feet under you, collaborating with others, making a game in 72 hours is a really fun experience. It teaches you a lot. It's very satisfying and it bulks up your portfolio. So that's a great way to prove your interests, passions, and capabilities when applying for jobs in the games industry.
Cool. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thanks for
it's been a
dropping by.
pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. This is Renee, the creator of Potions of Curious Tale. And yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. It was such a privilege getting to talk to Riku Cat today about her game and about what got her into the gaming industry, and also getting to learn some of the surprising struggles that came along with making her game. If you haven't played Potions of Curious Tale, definitely give it a play because it's just a nice, cozy game to sit and relax and play. Anyways, you guys have been great, and I've been Zeebs.